Greetings and welcome to the third annual Afrocentric Student Research Conference hosted by the Africana Studies Department at California State University, Northridge. Please join me in welcoming Brianna Pachun as she provides a land acknowledgement.
Good afternoon. Before we begin, the Department of Africana Studies and CSUN would like to recognize the Native people that were sacrificed in order for us to be here today. Prior to the invasion of the Spanish, this land was inhabited by the Sissevitam, the Native American Tongva, whose name means people of the earth, and the Tataviam, whose name means people facing the sun. We acknowledge and honor with endless gratitude the Tongva and the Tataviam people for the land that this university has been founded on. We honor the descendants of all Native people, past, present, and future. We would also like to honor the millions of enslaved Africans whose blood, sweat, and tears were the foundation of this country. It has been the African people's social activism and social justice that has made this country what it is today. The African fight for liberation has become the blueprint for all justice movements. Just as those before us have fought with the utmost dedication and determination, we too shall fight for equity, justice, and sovereignty for Native people and the people of African descent, not only here at CSUN, but throughout the nation.
Thank you, Brianna, for that important land acknowledgement. The Afrocentric Student Research Conference fosters African and Afrocentric scholarship among student researchers. The conference provides a venue for students to share their research that focuses on issues related to persons of African descent. Employing culturally compatible research methodologies, students engage diverse research areas in an attempt to empower and liberate Africana communities. The conference selection process is peer-reviewed and operated by a student conference committee. Undergraduate and graduate students are invited to submit their research abstracts for presentation. This year marks the third annual Student Research Conference and was designed and managed by students in the Africana Studies 498 Pro Seminar class. The conference is housed in the Africana Studies Department and is intended to create research engagement and dissemination opportunities for students researching African phenomena. This year's conference theme is an Afrocentric reimagining of Black communities, culture, health, and wellness, and was developed by our student conference convening committee. We want to give special thanks for our conference committee members, as well as a special acknowledgement to associated students who provided the funding for today's program through an IRA grant. Greetings once again on behalf of the Africana Studies Department. We, the faculty, staff, and students are excited to have you all join us today. And we also would like to provide an opportunity for Associate Dean Wu to bring greetings on behalf of our College of Social and Behavioral Sciences.
Hello, everybody. My name is Boshu Wu. I'm the Associate Dean in the college. I first want to thank Africana Studies faculty and staff for making this event possible. This is the third year that we have such an important, impactful research conference that is contributed by students. I also want to continue to thank my colleagues in the Africana Studies Department to continue to do an outstanding job in mentoring the student, in becoming an important role model for our students. Thank you very much. I also want to congratulate our students' achievements. You have a wonderful opportunity to be led by a group of very dedicated faculty. In today's research conference, this is the place where you can actually showcase your achievements, to share your insight, to support each other's. Your perspectives are important. Your opinions are impactful. We also need to hear you. Our society need to hear from you. The word Afrocentric for a lot of people is unique, but for you, that's essentially what you have been doing. Okay, our society needs to hear what people from the community have to say. So therefore, you are the extension of the voice. You will be carrying the voice and also your perspective, not just from at CSUN, but also back in the community. Our society, and always put it this way, and our community progress along with the direction that you guys will dictate. Thank you very much for making such an important contribution. Once again, I want to thank Africana Studies Department for making this space available to our students, to our staff, and also to our faculty. Thank you very much, and congratulations on your achievement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wu. At this time, we have a special performance from one of our outstanding graduating seniors from the Africana Studies Department. Please join me in welcoming John Crane.
Hello, good afternoon, guests, colleagues, faculty, and administration. Again, I'm John Crane, and I will be sharing some positive affirmations in the form of spoken word from an excerpt from a creative scholarship titled I Am. Again, this spoken word is titled I Am. I am an expression of the infinite with the rhythmic dissonance that your senses begin to shift toward and realign. Set the ship and begin to move forward into your spine, going into your mind. I am like a flash of light, the fastest night when sunrise past your sight. My passion fights into the last gasp of life. Then I rise from the ashes and afterlife. I'm blessed like I sneezed at the end of a prayer and stand up like legs on the end of a chair. I'm silent, I grind, I ain't into the flare. The work is well done, but the man is rare and air, and therefore I care. I'm cared for, leave a mark like scratching a chair on bare floors. Ignoring the negative stresses, my inner therapist channels a champion, the meaning of impressive.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, John, for your outstanding creative scholarship and your performance today at the Afrocentric Student Research Conference. We want to thank John and many of his classmates because they not only put forward research scholarships at today's conference, but they also will be providing their creative scholarship at today's conference as well. So let's get started. Our first session will be moderated by Savannah Scott.
Hello, everyone. Let's start session 1, titled Educational Justice and Empowerment, Dismantling Systemic Inequalities. The first presentation is by Devin Prince with the presentation titled The School to Prison Pipeline's Effect on Black Students.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is doing good today. I'm really excited to be here. So hi, my name is Devin Prince. I'm a senior double majoring in criminology and justice studies and Africana studies. And today I'll be presenting on the school to prison pipeline's effects on Black students. So here is a table of contents which showcases each part of my presentation. So first, I'll give a brief history on African Americans' educational journey in the US. Next, I'll discuss the existing literature present on the school to prison pipeline. After, I will explain my research methods, including my methodology, participants, measures, and procedures. And finally, I'll end off with my findings, the implications, my recommendations, and give my concluding statement. So it's important for us to fully understand Americans' long and unjust journey in the United States education system to understand how the school to prison pipeline is continuing to exploit Black students. Historically, African Americans have been ostracized from the United States education system. When enslaved Africans were brought to the US in 1619, they were unable to receive an education. There were laws that were created to keep Black people from being able to learn in their schools. These types of laws were very common in the South and helped keep African slaves illiterate. The Reconstruction era, which occurred in 1865 through 1877, made great improvements for newly freed slaves wanting to obtain an education, but once this era ended, becoming educated was difficult for African Americans to obtain. The Supreme Court case, Plessy versus Ferguson, which happened in 1896, legally established that separate but equal was constitutional and allowed segregated schools based on race as long as equal resources were provided. Although this court case was about Louisiana train cars, it was widely upheld in other institutions such as schools. Plessy versus Ferguson made racial segregation a United States norm. However, in the decades to come, it was evident that the schools that housed Black children were not receiving equal resources to their white counterparts. And in 1954, this case decision was overturned in Brown versus Board of Education. This case forever changed the trajectory of African Americans' educational journey by finding the separate but equal ideology unconstitutional. And this landmark case ended legal segregation in the education system. However, we still see today that in low income and Black and brown communities, their schools lack the necessary resources in comparison to other schools in other neighborhoods. So here is the definition of the school to prison pipeline that I used for my research. This phenomenon is the idea that children are funneled from their schools into the criminal justice system through school disciplinary actions. For my research, school disciplinary actions will include suspension, expulsion, arrests, and law enforcement referrals. And here is the existing literature present on the school to prison pipeline. So the first study conducted by Skiba et al. Found that focused on 364 students in the 2005-2006 academic year. The authors found that Black students were more likely than their white counterparts to be expelled or receive out of school suspension. More specifically, Black elementary school students were 2.19 times more likely to be sent to the office for behavioral issues than white students. In addition, Black middle school students were 3.78 times more likely. In the next study, Mizell et al. Studied how different factors impact disciplinary actions in schools, and around 2,540 students from Southern California in grades 10th through 12th were selected for this study. And the findings of the study showed that students who identified as Black and male were more likely to be suspended or expelled. In the third study, Gibson et al. Focused specifically on Black female students' unique experiences in regards to out-of-school suspensions. And this study used a sequential method design to study the out-of-school suspensions of 10 different Black girls. After conducting their research, the authors found that due to the intersection of race and gender, Black girls received more harsh out-of-school suspensions. In relation to their white, Asian, and Hispanic counterparts, Black girls were overrepresented in their out-of-school suspensions. And in the final study, Barnes and Motz reported that Black youth are more likely to be suspended, expelled, and arrested than white youth. And these students were interviewed a total of 4 times over the span of 10 years. And the results of the study showed that Black youth were 1.759 times more likely to be suspended or expelled than white youth. So by the 4th interview, Black youth were arrested more than white youth, resulting in a 60% increased likelihood of Black students being arrested over white students. So overall, the existing literature is very consistent that Black students, both male and female, are disproportionately affected by school disciplinary measures. So for my research, I used an Afrocentric framework, and you might be asking, what is Afrocentricity? And it's a systemic approach that prioritizes Africana culture as the way to liberate people of African descent. So by applying an Afrocentric methodology, Black students' experiences will be studied, evaluated, and validated from their own cultural frameworks. So this research will question whether Black students' experiences with school disciplinary actions are due to their cultural norms. And so next I'll be getting into my methods. So for my participants, I analyzed pre-existing data on this topic. I then used the statistical data from the US Department of Education to evaluate how Black students are uniquely experiencing the effects of the school to prison pipeline. For my measures within the analyzed data, I specifically looked at different school disciplinary actions such as suspension, expulsion, and detention rates that Black students have received, in addition to arrest rates. And finally, for my procedures, I looked at disciplinary action data in regards to Black students in LAUSD, and this data was statistically analyzed to show the effects of the school to prison pipeline on Black students. These findings were then compared to the other pre-existing data. So now I'll be focusing on the findings of my research. So for the rate of suspension, the US Department of Education provided that Black students only represent 16% of the student population. In both of the graphs I have in my slides, Black students are represented in red and the other students are represented in blue. So despite only being 16% of the student population, Black students represented between 32 and 42% of suspended or expelled students. So we can see that this is extremely disproportionate, considering that Black students represent less than 1/5 of the population, of the student population. In out-of-school suspensions, it was found that Black students are expelled and suspended 3 times more than white students. And this translates to Black girls being receiving out-of-school suspensions over 12% more than their peers, and Black boys receiving out-of-school suspensions around 20% more than their peers. And finally, within arrests and law enforcement referrals, it was found that Black students represent 27% of the law enforcement referrals and 31% of school-related arrests. So it's evident that Black students experience the effects of the school to prison pipeline more than their counterparts, but this brings up the important question as to why Black students are overrepresented in the school discipline efforts. So there are 3 main reasons as to why Black students are negatively affected by the school to prison pipeline. And the first is due to their cultural norms and racism. So many Black students use the African worldview, which is rooted in cooperation and groupness. However, many of the schools that Black students attend follow the European worldview and its ideals. So that means that the Black students who are following the African worldview principles will be punished in their classroom for not following the European worldview. And it's also important to mention that Black students can also be experiencing racism at the hands of their teachers in their classrooms. The next reason is due to adultification, which refers to adults' generalized perception of Black girls and boys as more adult without reference to their individual behaviors. So this means that teachers and administrators are seeing Black students as older than they are and expecting them to behave at a higher level. In turn, this contributes to teachers and administrators punishing Black students for their behavior, even though their behavior is adequate for their age. And finally, the last reason for Black students being overrepresented in school discipline efforts is due to a lack of diversity in schools. So it's found that in the 2018-2019 academic year, only 3.9% of California teachers were Black. So without a sufficient amount of Black teachers and faculty in our schools, Black students are able to be punished at a higher rate than their counterparts. So here are my recommendations based on the research I conducted. So first, our teachers need to be well-versed in different cultures and worldviews in order to understand the behaviors of all of their students. We also need to make sure that our teachers and faculty have no racial biases or prejudices towards Black students before they start teaching. Next, we need our teachers and faculty to treat and see our Black children as Black children. We can't expect our Black students to behave older than they should. And lastly, we must increase our diversity in schools. Not only do we need more Black teachers, but we also need more Black faculty and staff in our schools. This can help significantly cut down on the overrepresentation of Black students in school discipline. So in conclusion, Black students experience the effects of the school to prison pipeline more than their counterparts. Black students are overrepresented in multiple school discipline efforts, including the rate of suspension, out of school suspensions, arrests, and law enforcement referrals. And we can conclude that Black students' experiences with the school to prison pipeline are due to their cultural norms and racism, adultification, and a lack of diversity in their schools. And finally, there are various changes that are needed to dismantle the school to prison pipeline's effects on Black students. So overall, it's extremely important that these changes are implemented quickly so that we can mitigate the effects of the pipeline on the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. Next, we have a presentation by Taniko Smith titled Structural Inequalities and Systemic Racism in American Public Education.
Good afternoon. Hello, my name is Taniko Smith. I will be doing my presentation on the structural inequalities and systematic racism in American public education for K through 12. In 1954, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously in the Brown versus Board of Education case that state laws that would prohibit racial segregation in public schools as unconstitutional, even if the segregated schools were equal in quality. The ruling of this case gave way to the mesh of both white and brown complexions that we see in the classroom. Although schools are desegregated now and the same quality of education is accessible to all, why are Black students still in the lower percentile of the test scores and graduation rates? The U.S. educational system is centered more towards a Eurocentric approach in what success and wealth looks like. To explain this in simpler terms, it's like trying to give the same size shoe to everybody knowing that everyone has a different size. This research examines structural inequalities and systematic racism in American public education for K through 12 and the impact on African-American children's self-concept, and academic achievement. The previous literature is from Lewis. Mr. Lewis proposes that in her research, or Mrs., apologies, that as teenagers in high school are taught on the premise that they will all go to college. In doing so, these high schools don't properly equip those who can't go to college with the skills needed to survive in the real world, further putting them in the same positions that their parents were in at risk. My study, with an emphasis on high schools in this article, the necessary skills are not being taught to the students who won't go to college. The research question that this article pinpoints is answered in great detail, as well as sheds information how we can destigmatize that you need to go to college to be successful. Another previous literature by Ladson Billings, he argues that the African-American students in urban schools face a multitude of challenges impeding their pathways to success, making the most disadvantaged children remain disadvantaged. Her findings are related to my study because one of the inequalities I'm looking at is the lack of Black teachers. Ladson goes into a good amount of detail explaining how kids learn more about what's outside of the classroom through similar race teachers. All the authors' questions were answered, but I would have liked the researchers to add more statistics to truly emphasize their points. Brockman isolates with his study whether double consciousness, multicultural, or Afrocentric perception best depicts identity conflict among African Americans during young adulthood and adolescence, mainly surveyed towards kids in schools. Move on. So the focus of my research is this research examines the structural inequalities of the systematic racism of the American public education system for K through 12 and their impact. So the methodologies that I chose was the Afrocentric, the framework that to analyze the educational inequalities experienced by African American children in the U.S. educational system. It is imperative that we study the educational experience of African American children from their own cultural experience to examine the systematic inequality as well as to deconstruct barriers to equitable education. So for my methods, through the analysis of previous studies that highlight the lack of Black teachers, limited access to magnet schools, and lack of standardized testing prep as factors for hindering Black student academic achievement. The statistical data on African American students' retention, GPA, test scores, graduation rates, and overall success will be analyzed. Additionally, data on the availability of resources and cultural curriculum to enrich Black students and their educational experiences. To finish the study, the three main inequalities looked at surrounding the academic success of Black students will be shown and examined properly. The data collection of these topics will then be after deep analysis, or will be done with a deep analysis. I will then identify if a Eurocentric take on education is a hindrance to the development of Black students. The analysis of the research studies come from Pew Research Center and the National Center of Education and Statistics, yielding shocking results. Well, looking at the demographics for public schools in rural areas, Black teachers make up 7%. Black teachers make up 7% of the teaching force, and their white counterparts make up 79%. As schools are growing more and more diverse with their students, their teachers are not. This is heavily emphasized by 69% of teachers in urban schools are white and 12% are Black. And when you look past that, in rural areas, about 90% of the teachers are white and 4% are Black. In urban schools, majority of the students are in low-income residents. In these schools, there are greater shares of teachers that are Black and Hispanic, but still with a low percentile. This is shown through students. This is looked at through students who qualify for free or reduced price lunch, which students who qualify, it's used as a proxy to see the income of the households. In schools where more than 75% of the students qualify, 14% of the teachers are Black and 63% are white. At schools where they're 25% or lower, 2% of the teachers are Black and 90% of them white. Next, we'll be looking at test scores. According to College Board's annual report of SAT test taking in 2021, the average score for reading and math for Black students was 477 and 457. These scores were the second lowest among all races and 85 points behind white students. Based on the College Board score range, the average Black students are below average in terms of education. Upon initially looking at this data, Black students are at the bottom of the educational ladder and will continue to be so if the population of the students does not reflect that of the teachers. It is impossible for a white teacher to relate to a young Black student who constantly has the world looking at what they do. A student who can't stay outside past certain times in fear of becoming another news story in both rural and urban areas. Black students don't have the access to magnet schools or test prep courses to enhance their scores and expand their interests and passions. The lack of fundamental resources leads to the low test scores shown. Until there is immediate action, there will only be more pain and strife for these young Black students continuing education.
Great job, Taniko. Now we have a presentation from Morgan Cognata titled Historical and Modern Medical Malpractice and the Impacts it has had on African American women.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Morgan Cognata. My presentation is on the historical and modern medical malpractice and the impacts that it has had on African American women. My table of contents, I'll be taking you through my introduction, my methods, my methodology, my findings, and my solutions. So we have to look at what is the African American experience with the medical experiments in the US and how have these experiments impacted African American women's relationships and engagements with healthcare in the US. Many studies have examined Western medical experiments that have been done onto African American women in recent, in African American women. In recent years, African American women's testimonials have been brought to light by modern day researchers showing the unsafe, unsedated, and non-consensual procedures done. One of the most common researchers found that has been the study of gynecology and how it truly came to be. Researchers show the long-lasting impacts that women had to face not only during times of enslavement, but as well not being able to be heard. In contemporary times, African American women endure racism in the medical field. Their pain and concerns for their health are ignored and dismissed. The maternal death rate amongst mothers and newborns is the highest amongst the Black family. Western medicine has and continues to deem the Black body as superhuman, hence refraining giving Black patients necessary pain medicines as well as as well as dismissing any tests that may be requested from the patient. My methodology, I have been using African-centeredness to see the African experience in America and its Western medicine, as well as using Africana womanism to understand that race comes before gender and gender comes before class in this case of medical studies. My methods include assessing the testimonials, journal entries, and using a combination of historical articles about mistreatment of African American women in medicine as compared to today's research on statistics of Black women in healthcare and justice of African American women who lack attendance in regular medical checkups due to mistrust. So according to my research, I found it from the CDC, the Black maternal death rate, when Black women are 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause. Factors that contribute to these disparities are variations in healthcare quality, chronic illnesses, structural racism, and implicit bias. Our statistics have shown that 100,000 or per 100,000 live births, 41 deaths occur in Black women and their infants. Leading causes of pregnancy-related deaths include cardiovascular conditions, other non-cardiovascular medical conditions, and infections. I wanted to bring Serena Williams to the spotlight because her case has been heard around the world, and she's a prime example of what African American women have to go through today as well in history. For those of us who may not know who Serena Williams is, she's an African American woman ranked #1 tennis player in America according to Women's Tennis Association. And she tells her experience of medical malpractice. Serena Williams was pregnant, and during her labor and delivery, her infant's heart rate was dropping. Hence, they had to give a cesarean section to Serena Williams. After or during her cesarean section, she began to experience a pulmonary embolism. Regardless of Williams knowing exactly what she was going through and advocating for herself as best as she could, despite being in pain, her nurses just chalked her up to being just severely confused from her medication. Serena Williams knew that she needed a CAT scan and requested as such, but they ignored her and dismissed it, thus resulting in giving her an ultrasound instead, which of course nothing came from her ultrasound. And due to her medical team's ignorance, Serena Williams was experiencing extreme coughing from blood clots forming in her lungs. And due to the severity of the coughing, basically her cesarean scar bursted. And because of this, an extensive list of major events resulted in Serena Williams' near death. And this is just one prime example of many that Black women in America have to experience in medicine. So I provided from research and gathering from other resources that what solutions could be taken. So on preventative care part, we look at that you can document all pregnancy-related conditions as well as pre-existing health conditions and family conditions. For example, something like a pedigree that you could mark up and have with you in doctor's appointments. Seeking medical attention immediately if experiencing any slight maternity warning signs. That can go from swollen ankles, coughing, severe headaches, the smallest of things. And I would say number one is maintaining a support before, during, after pregnancies. Having a support system surrounding you aids in more advocating. And our last one for preventative care is self-advocation. Our solution for healthcare providers, asking more questions to your patients and understanding their concerns and being sympathetic, I believe is a #1 rule, because patient care comes before finding solutions in whatever they're experiencing. Educating patients and their support systems on the sign of maternal health risks. I feel this one is common, however, it doesn't feel it is, that medical professionals should do the best that they can to provide pamphlets, resources, so that the patients and their support systems can have a better understanding of what they're going through and may be able to help someone else if they see signs in other people. Helping patients manage chronic conditions throughout pregnancy, paying extra special attention to those chronic conditions that may be very scary and uncertainty throughout pregnancy. Providing all patients with respectful care. Again, providing this will create hopefully some comfort in the patient and trust within a medical professional. Being aware and addressing unconscious bias in themselves and the office. This is where accountability comes in, holding healthcare professionals accountable and their office, meaning that they can't be out and about saying what they're saying. They need to realize where they're coming from in a place of bias when it comes to the patient. And this last one, implementing a doula and respecting doulas as a part of the healthcare system. My colleague actually helped me with this one. And doulas come not only as an advocate for a patient, but they provide a safe space and something that could be deemed as very scary and uncertain. So having doulas, having them a part of the insurance system and the healthcare system is a top priority. And last solution is a macro look at hospitals and the healthcare system. So it's identify and address unconscious bias in healthcare all over the nation. Drastically improve quality of prenatal care and postpartum care. Things like paternity leave, maternity leave need to be longer. There needs to be more Black child care and more Black child rearing care and support to Black mothers, and education. This is something that is the equivalent to critical race theory in medicine. Thank you.
Great job, Morgan, and a round of applause for all of our panelists. And now we have some time for question and answers from the audience. Looks like we don't have any questions, but I want to encourage anyone that has questions to type them, and I can give them to our panelists and we can get some questions going and answers.
Well, thank you once again to the panelists. Thank you, Savannah, for moderating today's session for our first opening session. I want to just say congratulations to you all. That was an outstanding opening to our Afrocentric Student Research Conference. Thank you for putting forward your brilliant research and your solution-based research to addressing issues impacting Africana communities. At this point, we want to welcome back Morgan, who will moderate our session number 2.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all again. We will be doing session 2, Black community development and interpersonal relationships. Our first presenter is going to be Brianna Pachun, representations of adult Black women's romantic relationships in movies using a Black feminist lens versus a non-Black feminist lens.
Alrighty, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Brianna Patoon, And my research is on representations of adult Black women's romantic relationships in motion pictures using a Black feminist lens. And my research question will be, are Black women's representations in romantic relationships in motion pictures positively impacted when they are told through a Black feminist lens? This research will be using a Black feminist methodology to provide a historical and cultural examination of Black womanhood and Black women's romantic relationships in both movies and television. I seek to expose the history and intentions behind these tropes, how they continue to affect the image of Black women, along with the effects of having a Black feminist behind the lens. Okay, so here we have the history, the beginning of where these tropes began. So during slavery, post-slavery, during the Reconstruction era, efforts to destroy the perception of Black people and particularly Black women were imperative in the maintenance of white supremacy. So this era would produce characters such as the Mammy and the Jezebel. And these tropes individually contributed to narratives that, minimize the effects of slavery. That was their purpose. Here we have the Mammy, usually portrayed by a dark-skinned or an overweight Black woman or someone in blackface, usually wearing the head wrap. The Mammy was created to masculinize Black women and deter any notions that Black women were sexual or feminine beings capable of being raped by their white masters. So once again, just to try to deny the fact that Black women were being raped during slavery. We also have the Sapphire, the sassy Mammy. She's angry, sassy, she's angry, sassy, loud, emasculating. Whereas the Mammy is more warm, if you will, that kind of like cozy happiness. The Sapphire was the sassy Mammy. She was sassy, she was emasculating, loud, she kind of had an attitude. And her purpose was to create the idea that, if Black women can be so sassy and expressive with white people, then slavery must not be that bad. Then here we have the Jezebel. The depiction of the mulatto is usually used for the Jezebel. She is overtly sexual, promiscuous, meant to be the antithesis of white women's purity. Also, another narrative to say, okay, well, if Black women are being raped they can't be raped by white men because look at how promiscuous she is. So what does this mean today? Well, though these tropes are slightly modified, they have continued to be passed down. We see this effect, we have effects on the romantic portrayals of Black women. Black women, particularly dark-skinned Black women, are still considered undesirable and portrayed that way in motion pictures, sassy, unlovable, emasculating. And then when we do have Black women that are considered sexual or attractive, it's typically lighter skinned women. Okay, so then we have the reinvention of the non-Black feminist lens and how that's being portrayed today. So these types of movies typically receive the most recognition. Romantic relationships that entail Black women are either strained or non-existent. We kind of have this push for struggle love. Black women are encouraged to be ride or die, and that's encouraged also in film and television. They're still angry, considered difficult to love. We see the baby mama trope, the bitter baby mama, or desperate to keep a man, and that whole terminology of like, oh, having to do whatever you need to do to keep him, which seems to be only applying to Black women. Okay, so here we have examples in the way that we see these tropes played out in movies today. Tyler Perry very often. Here I use the example of acrimony, which the woman is basically punished for not sticking by her man on the 18th year of struggle after providing for him. And, you see her get karmic revenge for not sticking by her man. We see Black women unworthy of love without pain. So there's usually this narrative of, if you want to have love, there has to be something else sacrificed in place of that love. You must stick by the poor Black man, no matter what, by any means. Black women must choose between love and financial comfort. So if Black women want the rich man, well, then that comes with a little bit of abuse. That comes with some other things, but you get which is nothing wrong with that, but you get the trusty old blue collar worker in the cornrow wig, and everything works itself out. And then also successful Black women are punished and considered angry and incapable of relationships and maintaining relationships, as if to say being intelligent and independent means that you are incapable of loving someone. So all of this comes into play these days. However, through a Black feminist lens, we see more positive imagery of Black women viewed as desirable. Dr. Nahum Willing states that the unique experience that Black women have and how greatly it impacts the way that their story is told. This experience is identified as the triple consciousness theory, basically stating that Black women's worldview has three lenses: American, Blackness, and womanhood, and that Black women creators, such as Issa Rae, she has been successful in radicalizing Black womanhood and providing a broader, more accurate perspective. So we see, when there is a Black feminist behind the lens, we see non-colorist standards of desirability, healthy relationships that come without consequence or not in exchange of anything. Even non-healthy relationships are not rooted in struggle, they're not admired, they're not held on a pedestal. And we also see Black as beautiful. Okay, so one motion picture that I analyzed, research, was Black Panther. And, although he's not a Black woman, Ryan Coogler absolutely advocates for Black feminism in this movie. We see Black women as strong, and their strength is not used as a negative. The Black woman's beauty is praised. All the beautiful Black women are wearing their natural hair straight from the motherland. The relationship status is not centered on Eurocentric beauty standards. We see a beautiful dynamic between T'Challa and Nakia. He loves her, he cherishes her. We see him admiring her for all that she is. Also, the relationship between Okoye and W'Kabi, there's not only admiration, but there's also respect. And there's nothing, they don't have to exchange anything for that. I also researched Insecure, and Issa Rae depicts Black women without tropes and without stereotypes. Black women are desired and respected, sought after by all kinds of men. We see them in different sorts of relationships. There isn't this praise of struggle love. It just shows Black women's journey and through relationships and through life. We see successful Black women still trying to find their way, and it's not rooted in any colorism, any racism. There's just no tropes behind that. And we also see an embrace of their sexuality, which is not something that you see often. Okay, another show that I analyzed was Run the World. The creator of the show, Lee Davenport, refers to this as a love letter to Black women. It is considered a Black version of Sex in the City. And I think it's because back in those days, we didn't see the Black woman story. The Black women were not allowed to tell their story. It wasn't really the space for that. So this gives us the space. There's different shades of Black women maneuvering through relationships. The ride or die trope is dismantled when a woman is unhappy with the way that a man is providing in her marriage. She is able to leave that without it being some revenge for that. Karma doesn't come after her. Everybody doesn't attack her. She is allowed to feel that way. And then Black women are allowed to be vulnerable. And in my research, I did find arguments that said that these shows actually push the stereotypes with their, overtly sexual nature, the issues of infidelity, all like taking on certain responsibilities in relationships. But I feel like a part of what makes something a trope is that it takes control and power away from Black women. And a Black feminist lens is not meant to be like an obligation to produce a utopia of the perfect Black woman. It allows Black women to be human and flawed but from her own perspective. And oftentimes, like, these things are only considered tropes and are only criminalized when it's attached to a Black woman. So in these situations, Black women are in power and in control, flaws and all, allowed to be exactly who they are. So what does the Black feminist lens mean for Black women? Well, it means that we have more accurate representations of ourselves. We watch these shows and we get to see ourselves and see our lives and see ourselves represented. It lessens the impact that tropes have on us. We're no longer attached to the Jezebel, the Mammy, where we become attached to the Issa Raes and the Mollys and things like that, and we're heard, and it just changes the narrative on how society views us. We all know that TV and media has a great impact on how we're all viewed, and particularly Black people. So I believe that a change in this and more pictures and movies and films showing a Black feminist lens will also change how people see us. And it also will change how Black women place themselves in relationships, not feeling like they need to stick by someone regardless of anything. We're not feeling confined to ride or die for anyone. We get to see ourselves successful and advocating for ourselves and feeling beautiful and just seeing ourselves across the board. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Brianna. That was a beautiful presentation. Our next presenter is going to be Mickey Garner, and the title is The Cost of Securing the Bag, an examination of the Black woman's experience in the workplace.
Thank you, Morgan. So my name is Mickey Garner. I am an Africana Studies major and graduating senior, and my presentation is called The Cost of Securing a Bag, an examination of the Black woman's experience at work. So my research, the focus of my research is an exploration of Black women's experiences in the workplace. So using an Africana womanism approach, this analysis focuses on race first, followed by gender, and then class, and will expose the occupational inequalities of Black women that they face in the workplace that are both racial and gender-based. Once research was gathered, it was analyzed and compiled to provide a contemporary analysis of factors contributing to the struggles that Black women face. Case studies, surveys, interviews, and statistics from several authors and researchers were analyzed to justify the claim that Black women have and continue to experience a disproportionate amount of inequalities in the workplace. The critique will also utilize the materiality methodology, and findings will uncover the detrimental impact that workplace bias has towards women and what that impact has on the Black community as a whole as far as health and wellness. So the research, the methodology, like I mentioned, I used pre-existing data research where I analyzed, like I said, the Black women's experience at work, and I related it to health and wellness. The method chosen was because it really just gave me a broader range of the field work over the last 60 years in this particular topic, and explores the different challenges that Black women come up against. And the method was that I used the Africana womanism method opposed to the Black feminist ideology framework because it was best suited here. and it was concentrated on race. The data explained why Black women experience higher stress levels, received less advantages, and earned less annual income as opposed to their white counterparts and or male counterparts. So drawing conclusions from multiple different places of surveys and interpreting the data from the United States Census is pretty much where I got a lot of my data from. So the agenda for today is I'm going to go over the facts. We're going to talk about the experience, how it ties into health and wellness, and what the future holds. So historically speaking, Black women have had the highest participation levels in labor. So Black women make up 58% of the labor force compared to the 55.7% of their white non-Hispanic counterparts. And there's actually been recent research done that discredits the suggestion that Black women have made substantial strides in the workplace in such areas as, wages, closing the wage gap, equal opportunity employment, as well as upward mobility. And also statistics from the US Bureau of the Census illustrate that Black women are among the lowest group across both gender and race in job, employment, and poverty levels, which also go hand in hand. So here are just some statistics for Black women compared to other women as far as their participation in the workforce. As you can see, Black women far exceed any other groups as far as race as their contributions to the labor force. That is actually increased when you think about Black women's labor force participation rates as far as being mothers go compared to other races of women who have children that are 18 or older. Now, when you think about the fact that Black women make up a majority of the labor force, if you look at the pay equality rates, so even if you take education in as a factor, for example, everyone here is getting their bachelor's degree. So if you look that Black women earn 65 cents to every dollar that a white man makes with the same education level. Now, outside of statistics, there are certain things that can't really be measured or put into numbers when it comes to Black women in the workplace, and that's the experience that they have. Some of the things that Black women experience in the workplace are being hired and promoted or lack thereof, having to defend one's race, a lack of appropriate mentorship, having to code switch. There is the sense of hypervisibility or invisibility, coping with racism and discrimination, and also what seems to happen more often and causes the most stress are microaggressions. So now we're just gonna watch a really quick video about microaggressions.
Happy birthday to... Take it away, Amanda!
No, I'm fine.
Oh, come on, it's Sarah's birthday. Let's hear you sing. Sing, 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 sing. Come on, Beyonce.
Happy birthday to you. That was so beautiful. Anyway, who wants some cake?
Yeah, yes.
It's not easy being the minority in any situation, but in the workplace, as the only Black woman, it can be a very frustrating and stressful environment.
Okay, Beyonce. Now let's get in formation for this kick.
I'm just in the middle of something. I'll be there in a sec.
Oh.
And that, my friends, is an example of a microaggression.
Yeah.
So what is a microaggression? Brief, commonplace, daily verbal, behavioural or environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory or negative prejudicial slights and insults towards any group, particularly culturally marginalised groups. That's right, I've read up on this. It felt so good to be able to label that behavior, to give a name to the underlying stress and discomfort that comes from being confronted by microaggressions. He means well, but that's what makes these aggressions, well, micro. Intent is not the same as impact, and a throwaway comment or joke can have a huge impact on the rest of someone's day. I spoke to some friends about their experiences in the workplace. How does it make you feel? So we talked a lot about like these microaggressions, out and out racism, like in the workplace. How does that make you feel?
I know that I definitely feel kind of other, very separate to an extent that I don't talk about any kind of Black experiences I have outside of work.
One of the things that I don't like are those sweeping statements. Has anybody got an umbrella? Debbie will have one because Black people don't like to get their hair wet.
Right.
And here is the kitchen where we really get things cooking. But seriously guys, this space is used by everyone, so just be mindful about strong smelling foods. Sorry. Right, up next, the photocopiers.
I'm always like super polite, super kind, super cordial. Everyone's like, oh, Essie's super friendly. But sometimes I do just want to like snap back at somebody or get annoyed, and I feel like I can't.
I feel like the second I display passion for doing a good job, people are like, whoa, 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 whoa.
That was great, Amanda. I'm not sure the figures are quite accurate though.
Actually, I double checked them with finance to make sure, and they're spot on.
Whoa, girlfriend, maybe dial down the sass a little?
For a lot of my white colleagues, they're quite happy to just have all these discussions about racism, but because it doesn't affect them emotionally. Whereas for me, it's quite difficult to hear those conversations because it's like I've lived through a lot of that, and I'm just trying to do my work, and you're bringing up these really difficult issues for me.
Oh, Amanda, thank God. Explain to Sarah what the Black Lives Matter movement is.
All jokes aside, it can be very difficult when you find yourself on the receiving end of this kind of behaviour. So, what can you do about it? Well, I have a few ideas. Firstly, set up the situation. Kate, you know when you took us on that tour the other day? Next, objectively describe the behaviour and get clarification. You asked me to explain the Black Lives Matter movement. Why did you ask me? Next, and this is the most important bit, explain the impact. If you want the behaviour to stop, people need to know why. John, when you use phrases like, whoa, girlfriend, or describe me as sassy, it feels like you're accusing me of being aggressive and makes me worry about sharing my opinions. But I haven't seen you do this to any other members of the team. Final step, do differently. Work together to come up with solutions to ensure that you do things differently in future. To be completely honest, I hate singing on my own, and I don't think it's fair to put someone on the spot like that. Self-selected solos from now on?
Right.
Okay. It's not always going to be that easy, but hopefully these tips will provide some helpful navigation through difficult situations. And if things don't improve, or if you don't feel comfortable confronting a colleague, talk to your boss, HR, or union rep. Racial discrimination at work is illegal. It's everyone's responsibility to think about the impact that their words might have on someone else. Now, if you don't mind, I've got a party to get back to.
So I don't know about anyone else, but that video was very triggering for me, and kind of difficult to watch as someone who's experienced several of those microaggressions. So just watching them and actually, reliving that experience kind of is a great segue into how the experience at work really affects Black women in regards to health and wellness. So certain stressors, right? The stress that causes the most negative effect on Black women is chronic stress, which means that it's ongoing as a result of as a result of this, in Black women's bodies can produce more cortisol, and long-term exposure of cortisol can affect the whole body, including increasing a person's risk of heart disease, anxiety, obesity, and depression. And we see these type of things manifest in a real way when you look at health and wellness in Black women statistically. So African-American women have the highest rates of obesity or being overweight compared to other groups. So about 4 out of 5 African-American women are overweight or obese. Heart disease, African-American women are nearly 60% more likely to have high blood pressure as compared to their non-Hispanic white counterparts. More than 4% of Black women express symptoms of depression compared to the 3% of white women. And this statistic, really stuck with me in regards to anxiety. So data shows that for Black women, anxiety is not only more chronic, but the symptoms are more intense than their white counterparts. So just things to keep in mind as Black women are in the workplace and they're experiencing these stressors on an everyday basis. These things are costing them their lives. But it's not all bad, right? I don't want to say that, there's no hope. There is a future in Black women having a place at work where they feel comfortable and where they can thrive. So a couple things that I found through my research, coping with workplace stressors. Black women, we can slow down, right? I think we can go ahead and debunk the whole strong Black woman narrative and slow down and not try to do everything. Get spiritual as an example, connect to whatever your higher power is and really ground yourself in it. Exercise regularly to combat the health implications of these daily stressors. Don't be afraid to ask for help, right? Again, debunking that, have to do everything on my own narrative. Get a support system. Although resources in the workplaces like mentorships and programs are scarce, they're not non-existent. They are there. And I have to say my all-time favorite one is just say no. Just say no. There was a psychology journal that said women in the workplace have a problem saying no because they think that it is a direct reflection of their competence if they don't want to do something. And then those statistics are even heightened, right, with Black women. So just some things to keep in mind. Now, if for some reason that is not working, then find a new workplace, which is what we've seen Black women do, especially in recent times. So as always, breaking the mold and doing something new and paving the way, we see that Black women represent 42% of all new women-owned businesses. That's 3 times the share of the female population and 36% of all Black-owned businesses, according to Forbes. And in the United States, it's an astounding 17% of Black women are in the process of starting and running new businesses. That's compared to just 10% of white women and 15% of white men. And then if you see here, the chart on the left just kind of shows what percent of entrepreneurs are starting those businesses in industries such as healthcare, government, wholesale, retail, and education. I'm going to leave you guys with a quote, and this is kind of my motto operandus when I'm thinking about myself as a Black woman in the workplace. Quote by Maya Angelou says, "My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style." Thank you guys so much for listening, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Mickey, for that very informative presentation, truly. Our next presenter is going to be Ivan Johnson. His title is Role of African Americans in Contemporary Industrial Economics.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivan Johnson. I am currently now an African American Studies major. I switched from mechanical engineering. The title of my presentation is The Role of African Americans in Contemporary Industrial Economies. For my intro, basically will be the main points of my whole overall presentation, which will be, the role of African Americans in the industrial field, the effects on African Americans, and the lack of work laborers in the force. as well as African Americans' level of influence in industrial economies and how slavery led to negative influences upon the labor market. The foundation of growth amongst the U.S. due to Black laborers, and the advancement of technology in today's economy, and the creation of unions amongst the Black population of labor workers, and the forming of unions really focus on ending slavery and gaining women's rights. So some historical background about it would be, main bulletins would be, enslaved African Americans endured brutal work conditions for centuries. About 1 million Black people were part of the Great Migration to become labor force workers. For example, as far as automobiles, steel, and shipbuilding. African Americans were segregated and underpaid by white employers. In the early 1800s, 1920s, there wasn't really much African Americans that were able to produce their work due to white Americans having opportunity for the jobs. The labor workforce was mostly made up of mostly made up of white Americans, but it was made up, as far as African Americans, it was made up of African American women. It was very difficult to move from agricultural, personal services, and domestic jobs to the labor workforce. And in the early days, plantation owners trained young Blacks to become organized laborers. For the literature review, I have a paragraph for that. Basically states, the increasing concern has risen regarding the representation of African Americans in the industrial field, with given the increased presence of reconstruction sites, many labor workers began to question whether, the diversity would stand and they would have equal opportunity in the labor workforce. Historically, Blacks have been regulated to perform work duties under stereotypical gender roles in the industrial field in companies in comparison to the industrial era. Within advances in society, African Americans who are labor workers use technology to do jobs now. Exploring Black urban life in the industrial era is significant to Black history. However, few studies have been conducted to evaluate the historical demographic of African Americans in the industrial era and workers in the industrial field endowment. For the methodology, I applied the Afrocentric methodology research that examines the Black experiences with systemic racism and the factors contributing to the diversity in the industrial era, and focusing on globalization and the economical status of African Americans. What I've used was historical articles and statistics based around the labor workforce from the early 1800s to contemporary times now. On my presentation as well, I also have a picture of like African Americans in the labor workforce now today, like how it's changed from them. Like cotton was the main thing that was going on for African Americans. Them being pushed into the labor workforce. And now it's like, so much they're in the office due to the, technology, and they're actually getting paid how they really want to. Far as the statistics and the methods and stuff, the statistics would say 70% of the labor workforce was made of white American men. Between the times of 1800 to 1870, the volume of cotton picked daily was by enslaved people, and it had raised over 400% during earlier times for African Americans that was picking cotton daily. To me, that was a big, huge percentage, because a lot of African Americans had to do that back in the day, and while white Americans were the ones, orchestrating it. Specific date. 1860, the slave trade and reproductive labor patterns led to an increase of the African American population up to about 4 million. 1870, 50% of African American women were in the labor force as well. In the 1970s, this is something that stuck out to me. It says the famous wave of women entering the workforce. This was classified as about 16.5% of white women providing the labor, while the African Americans were actually the ones, working. Cotton picking was very significant labor force for African Americans during that time period. It served as the leading export for the U.S. Also, I provided a quote as well. It says it's by Desmond Tutu. This stuck out to me regarding the stuff that goes on in labor force from back in the day to now and how it has an effect on African American men and women trying to get in, far as myself as well, how I'm trying to get in. It says, if you are neutral in a situation of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. And I chose that quote by Desmond Tutu because, for example, African Americans weren't neutral in the fight to change the narrative in the industrial field. We all fought together to end enslavement and gain women rights as well. And the forming of unions to take control of the labor workforce was allowing ourselves to create career opportunities, preventing unemployment for Black people. You guys can't see, but in the presentation as well, I pulled out a statistics chart as far as the unemployment rates and how they continue to fluctuate, where Latinos are actually at the top of the unemployment rate. We're right under them, but we're on the same Richter scale. And why white Americans are at the bottom, because they were the ones, able to make the wages that they had to in order to provide for themselves, while we had to be the ones to work and, slay. In conclusion to everything that I talked about, I basically put it together from what I got, plantation owners were the ones who managed the system of the forced labor, and plantation owners really used torture, family separation and violence to control the economy back in the day. And I would say far as ways to get people to really want to seek and go into the industrial field, I would say increasing the pay wage, because I know a lot of people who's in the industrial field now that are African Americans, whether it's male or women, and they go for their money. If we gonna work for it, we want our money, just like how everybody else would get it. And basically the entire industry was focused around African Americans and slavery and how we fought to end it through the formation of the unions. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ivan, for that presentation. Very informative. Our next presenter is going to be Esther Mensah, New Love, a creative expression of contemporary heterosexual African-American relationships.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Esther Mensah. My major is Africana Studies, and I'm minoring in Quality Assurance and Management. So my project is about the dismantling of modern heterosexual African-American relationships, Historically, Black relationships have stood the test of time. But contemporarily, they're very vulnerable and, sorry about that. Go back a little bit. They're vulnerable for the dismantling based off of the negative effect of social media and dating apps. So that's basically what my research proposal was about. And in my research and literary reviews, I found pre-existing studies and reviews that touched on the negative effects of social media and dating apps. And what I found and read was that there is an increase in infidelity rates and multiple sex partners with these dating apps and social media. So even though Black marriages have stood the test of time, in the civil rights movement, there was empowerment of couples and a lot of movements where the couples were just strengthened as, they're working towards a cause and bringing communities together. There is still a decline in contemporary times. And the reason is because of these social media apps and these dating apps. So we need to ask ourselves, why? Why is this the case, and what can we change about it? So my creative project and presentation is to bring awareness to this, and to bring awareness to the changes in communication and in our mating habits as well. So I wrote a poem, and I would like to present that to you guys. So here we go. The title is called On the Web, Then in the Bed. And bear with me, I'm a little bit dramatic. Ooh, that pic is fire. Hold up. Let me like this pic for attention. After retention. I gotta hit that. Let's keep it shallow and smooth. That cool? F the deeper connection. Can't get there because I haven't healed. Nah, I haven't strapped on my diving gear. So you can hear all the things I fear. Everyone I got near and what that did to me. So I'm gonna like this pic and swipe left or right. I'm gonna like this pic and I'm gonna be all right. I'm gonna stay by myself and get no help. Just stay on these apps that make me feel like I'm all that. Thank you. A lot of the literary reviews and research that I did, it focused mainly on the statistics and the data about the negative impacts of social media and dating apps. And some of the solutions that I came up with were pretty simple. Post-COVID, we can have in-person meetings again. We can commune and have parties and gatherings and social gatherings. So through the Afrocentric method and methodology, that aspect of community is still there within the Black community. So we can have these face-to-face interactions that are more authentic and less attention-seeking. And that way we can just connect on a more personal level rather than through a screen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Esther. I felt like I was at an open mic. Love that. Next, we have a Q&A. So please go ahead, drop those questions in the chat. I believe I can read them out loud for you if you'd like. I'd really just want to say thank you to all the presenters in this panel. Very informative, full of spirit, full of compassion. Great job. I see we had a question here for Brianna, and I believe you answered it privately. Would you like to say that out loud, or?
Okay, I didn't even realize that I answered it privately.
No, that's okay. I believe because we were in the middle of presentations, so perfect what you did. But if you want to talk about it out loud, it's up to you.
Okay, so let's see. So they asked me, why do I think that Tyler Perry movies are so popular, even among Black women, when they obviously have negative tropes pertaining to Black women? And I said that I believe that when Tyler Perry first stepped on the scene, there were not a lot of Black movies being made. I do remember seeing my first Tyler Perry play, Diary of a Mad Black Woman, being his first movie. So I think at the time it was something that was like new and I would say refreshing, because we weren't seeing a lot of Black movies and Black representation. And I think that over time, it took me a while and a bit of awakening to kind of realize that, okay, we're being made fun of, I think. And I think that, having one movie about a particular situation versus having 20 movies about a particular situation, it gets weird. And that's when you start to like ask questions and have an issue with that. And I think people have like gotten comfortable with him. They've grown to be very comfortable with his like genre of film. And then I've had conversations like with my mom and my aunt about him. And the one thing that they always say is, well, these people do exist. The person, the mom who allows, a boyfriend or someone to assault their daughter, or the abusive relationship, like these people exist. So why not discuss them? And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, a lot of people exist. We get to a point where there is a responsibility of representation and understanding the effects of only portraying Black women in a certain way. So I think it's a comfortability thing. I think that when he came out, a lot of Black people just kind of like ran to him. And I think like now we're just comfortable with that, with his movies and how he portrays things. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Brianna. Appreciate your answer. We have another question from Tanda M. How did the students choose their topics? What was their inspirations? Anybody, if you take the floor.
I'll talk about it. I chose my topic because I'm actually trying to get into the union right now to become a boilermaker and work for the oil refinery, because that's something that I wanted to do. So that's why I decided to write about it pretty much.
Thank you, Ivan. Yes, go ahead, Mickey.
Very similar to Ivan. The reason I chose my topic is because I have personal experience with it. I don't want to go age myself too much, but I've been in corporate America for about 11 years. And I can guarantee that everything that happened in that small video has happened to me on a smaller scale and unfortunately on a larger scale, borderline, blatant racism and borderline harassment. So for me, it's personal. And I think it's really important to shed a light on those things so that way we can put a name to it and address it. So it's, kind of my other life's passion to make sure that companies in my current line of work are not just talking diversity and inclusion, but they're living diversity and inclusion. Ironically enough, on those boards, there's not a lot of people of color on the diversity and inclusion boards. So I'm trying to change that and also start my nonprofit for mentorship for Black career women. So it's something for me, similar to Ivan, that's personal and that needs to be talked about a lot more when it comes to our health and wellness and the cost that I believe is too high for us wanting to have a seat at the table, and we're risking our lives for it, and we need to look at some alternatives. So.
Thank you, Mickey. You and Ivan are truly an inspiration. I appreciate that. I don't believe, does someone else want to answer that question at all?
I'll answer. I chose my topic because I am an Africana Studies major, and I do hope to one day be a professor in Africana Studies. So, and I'm a Black feminist. That's like always the vibe for me. So I wanted to, talk about and research something that I, felt personal. It was really personal to me, and I'm passionate about. Very passionate. Anybody knows talks to me, that's what I talk about. So it's just really passionate to me, and it just, helped me get to where I want to be.
So much, Brianna. I believe that is it for Q&A for our second panel. Turn this over to Dr. Gamage.
Thank you so much. At this time, we want to give another round of applause for our second panel for their outstanding and informative presentations and creative scholarship. Yes, Esther, for bringing the fire into your piece about a relevant and spot on popular topic that we're addressing today. So thank you so much. I'm actually going to take the time to invite Esther back to the stage to be able to moderate panel number 3. Esther?
Hello again. So session 3 is going to be about the affirmation of the Black aesthetic, representations, and creative expressions. Our first presenter is Zanani Dennis. She's presenting a resurgence of African spirituality in African-American female artists and creative works.
Okay. Hello, I'm Zanani. I'm doing a resurgence of African spirituality and African American female artists' creative works. I'm a double major in Africana Studies and Criminology and Justice Studies. So just to give a little historical background, historically, religion and spirituality have been major components of the African community, both on the continent and when we were captured and taken to this new world. It's been a catalyst for perseverance of the Black community through colonization, discrimination, and daily oppression. In addition to in times of just regular daily hardships, like our community, we often pray or ask our ancestors or whatever higher power we believe in for guidance or protection, or we'll thank them for what they provided us with. I also thought it was necessary to address the conversation between the white church versus the Black church. So with the white church, it was like we were forced to practice Christianity by like the colonizing Eurocentric view. We were taught in ways that were detrimental to African people. For instance, Christianity at a time was utilized to justify slavery, while the Black church, we've managed to strip away the Eurocentric aspects and practice Christianity in a way that has been beneficial to the Black community in ways that leads to what I have listed on my slide. Like the purpose is like to practice fulfilling ideals that contribute to a sense of pride, self-worth, and community and communal relationships. And this historical background is what led me to question what could the Black community achieve daily if we were being fulfilled by native African spiritual practices, same way that we were able to create the Black church and in ways that we can fulfill our own community. So I was just thinking, imagine what we could do if we never had to go through that erasure of culture. So my research topic, I'm basically doing a content analysis of my title, A Resurgence of African Spirituality and African American Female Artists' Creative Works. And I'm basically attempting to explain the need for Native African spiritual practices and how it can work to unite and heal the Black community within these Eurocentric societies. I'm going to be examining the use of African spirituality within these creative works and how they're adopting healthy, positive images of natural African spiritual practices. Whereas in this Eurocentric society, Native African spiritual practices, such as voodoo, for example, are often demonized. So these are just places where in creative works where it's celebrated. So this is my research question. Basically, is there a resurgence of African spirituality and African American female arts creative works? And what messages are these references trying to portray to the Black community? So I conducted my research utilizing an Afrocentric paradigm as a framework of analysis. And this was necessary because in order to examine the spiritual experiences of the culture of the Black community, African culture and experiences need to be placed at the center of any analysis made upon African people, culture, communities, and in order for me to effectively measure the ways that the Native spiritual practices have on the community and this and how like the erasure culture has affected the community, I would need to do so with the Black community at the center of my analysis. So these are the creative works that I chose. I chose to analyze Beyonce's Lemonade, Solange's When I Get Home, Queen Africa's Climb, Janelle Monáe's The Ark, Android, and then Erykah Badu's A New America, Return of the Ankh. And I chose these people because of their individuals in a sense of pride and their African identities. They express that in just the way they carry themselves in the media, and it bleeds into their art. So it was necessary and it was appropriate for me to choose these pieces. And I basically did a content analysis of both the visual and lyrical references to African spiritual practices within these works. So within my first batch of findings within the Janelle Monáe album, she has her cover in a sense of like referring to Nefertiti's crown. And Nefertiti was the queen of the dynasty of ancient Egypt, and she's known for like religious revolution. And she does so also while addressing a different theme of Afrofuturism. And her lyrical references are to referring to Black people as kings and queens, and she has an emphasis on drums all throughout the album, and an emphasis on a continuous flow of life and death being cyclical, which is an aspect of Native African spirituality and thinking, and that life is never ending, and like the timeline is cyclical, rather in the Eurocentric review, it's like linear. And drums are crucial to the spiritual practices. It's looked at as like the heartbeat. It's present at any ceremonial gathering. It's basically helps with the theme of a balance between life and death and reincarnation. And with Queen Africa's cover, she has on a traditional headdress, and she has lyrical references to rebellion through combating white supremacy and empowering education and spirituality and unifying the community. And she also touches on both verbal and physical manifestation, and it basically furthers the theme of the universe is listening and everything is spiritual and everything is in tune and with everything else. Everything is done with intent, everything is done with purpose, and there's a reason, whether we know it or not. It's if we don't know, then the ancestors must know. And that's basically the two themes for these two albums that touch on African spiritual references. And so my findings continued with Solange's album, and she has multiple lyrical references to reminding listeners on the powers of manifestation and the different realities of life, and how in an African worldview within spirituality, you're able to transcend boundaries of existence with like intent and purpose, and how there's multiple realities in life. There's like our present one, and then there's the ancestral one, and then there's the time in between, and how we all combine together, similar to the previous example of like the timeline being cyclical rather than linear. And she also touches on what I mentioned previously with how colonization attempted on washing away Black faith. And how they tried to brainwash us and convince us into practicing their religious practices rather than our own. And an example that she touches on is a practice in Voodoo, where she basically explains the cleansing power of Florida and American eau de cologne, which is often used as a form of holy water within the Voodoo spiritual practice. And Erykah Badu, and just in the title, she references a return to the Ankh. And again, the Ankh is another African spiritual reference, and the Ankh basically means eternal life, which is again, as I said, the opposite of like the Eurocentric worldview, where there's a beginning and an end to life, where in the Afrocentric worldview, life is cyclical. And she mentions how there's a frequency between art, emotion, spirituality, and life. And just like I said before, everything is done with intent, and everything is related to another. And she also enforces spiritual salvation and how the music is in tune with spirit. And she also references Africans being forced into Christianity, similar to Solange. But back to the music being in tune with spirit, it's the same thing with everything. It has intention, and we make art for life's sake, not just art for art's sake. And another reference to aspects of Native African spiritual beliefs being showcased in a positive light are in Beyonce's album Lemonade. She has multiple references. She has, there is a scene where she's practicing a spiritual group ritual, which is like body art and clothing from the Yoruba tribe in West Africa. She also references Oshun frequently, not just in the Lemonade album, but in this Lemonade album, she has her music video for Hold Up, and she's dressed as Oshun, and she's symbolizing Oshun's characteristics. And Oshun is a goddess in Yoruba religion, and she's usually associated with water, purity, love, sensuality, but she also possesses human attributes such as vanity, jealousy, and spite. And in addition, she also has headdresses like Nefertiti within her hairstyles expressed within the visuals of that album, similar to Janelle Monáe's cover. And in Don't Hurt Yourself, she also has references to voodoo priestess dancing in the Ring of Fire. And she also has references in Sorry to spiritual transitions, again, talking about the afterlife, talking about how we're all in tune with the present and our ancestors and the afterlife, and how we all feed off of each other. In conclusion, these artists were able to utilize aspects of Native African spirituality in ways to heal and express themselves, and it bled into their creative expression. And I chose this topic because it was just interesting to see how they were able to use these Native practices to just heal and unify their mind, body, and spirit. And it was just interesting to see how this is just the surface. Like, imagine what we could have achieved if we didn't go through that erasure culture of our own spiritual religions.
Thank you, Zanani. Amazing presentation. It's really important for us to dive deeper into spirituality and not just accept, what's being given. Our next presenter is Alicia Hodge, The Importance of African Perceptions and Representations in Films.
Hi, my name is Alicia Hodge. I'm an Africana Studies major, and my presentation today will be about Black representations in films. It's entitled Thomas Rice to Tyler Perry. So basically, there was a man, his name was Thomas Rice, and you may know him as Jim Crow. He was a performer looking to advance his career, and he claimed to have heard this song from a Black person that offered an authentic perspective about Black people, and the song was called Jump Jim Crow. He performed it in Louisville in 1828, and although it wasn't the first time a white person had a Black in their face, it was definitely something that really took off and advanced the doings of Blackface. So it went from something being local on a Southern level to something being popularized on a nationwide level and an international level in Europe. And it was so popular that it became a derogatory term for African Americans, and actually that is why we have Jim Crow laws. So some of the Blackface caricatures, some of the Blackface caricatures were the Mammy, which was the happy servant. It perpetuated the images that Black people wanted to be slaves, and that they felt their service was to be the grandmother, the mother, and the maids for white people, and they actually enjoyed doing that. There was also the Tom, who was similar to the Mammy, the male version. He was a happy servant as well. He felt loyal to his master. He felt that he would have no direction without his master, so he relied heavily on white male direction. There's the Coon, which is the Black people are lazy. They need to be domesticated because otherwise they wouldn't have any ambition to do anything. They'll just lay around all day and eat watermelon type stuff. And then there was the Brute, which is basically uncontrollable Black men. He perpetuates the idea that we need to protect Black women from this sexual violent beast. These are some of the surface. There are plenty more, but those are the ones that I decided to discuss in this particular presentation. So the next slide is about the continuity of Black caricatures. So the reason that a lot of Black people today the reason that a lot of caricatures still exist is because Black people still take on those roles and the responsibilities of kind of perpetuating those ideas. And it's because the Academy Awards for 87 years, 99% of the winners in the writers category were white. And at the Emmy Awards for 21 years, 99% of directors in comedy categories were white. So everybody who was winning these awards and all these ideas they were coming up with, they were white people. So Black people, to fit in these spaces, had to conform to white ideas. And this is why you see a lot of continuity with Black people and the caricatures from the previous films. Okay, so who are they trying to please? The mainstream audience in America, America's population is 74.3% white, which means that about 3 in 4 Americans are white people. And white people make about 1.5 times more than the Black American. So these films are navigated heavily towards white audience because they're the most of Americans and they also make more money. So a lot of people are making films to please the images and fulfill what the white audience wants to see, basically. So basically, in an African worldview, the characters will look a lot more versatile. They will be a lot more fluid in their identity. They will be a lot more open-minded and flexible to different ideas, because that's pretty African. Okay, and then we have communal. A lot of Black people are communal. If you ever heard the proverb, the African proverb, "It takes a village," it's a perfect representation of how Black people are very dependent on one another. Like your neighbor's gonna take care of you, your auntie's gonna take care of you, your uncle, everybody has a responsibility to one another. Black people are also very spiritual. We believe that there is a higher power that makes us accountable, whether it's our ancestors or whether it's a God, whatever it is, we believe that we will be held accountable for our actions, and that yeah, and also there's interdependency, which basically means that we believe that everything has a purpose and we have a purpose for everything. So we rely on each other and everything else relies on us. So we try to keep everything kind of like, you know, flowing and smooth, and we take care of everything. Everything else is in return supposed to take care of us as well. So I did a film, I chose 4 films based on random sampling. They were Black lead films. The first film I chose was Fade Out, released in 2020. Then I released Bad Boys for Life, released in 2020. Candyman, the remake, released in 2021, and Medea's Homecoming, released in 2022. For time purposes, I will only be going over Medea's Homecoming because it's the most recent film, and I believe that it's very relevant to this specific topic. Medea's Homecoming, just a little short synopsis. It's about a college graduate who is coming home from school, and he decides to come out to his family. At the same time, his mother and father just recently went through a divorce, and he doesn't know it yet, but his mother is dating his roommate. It also slightly mentions police and Blacks interactions, and the common themes within the film is basically love is love, same gender loving, and you know, love has no age. Those are like the common themes, and also compromise between Black people and police officers. It often suggests that Black people need to be more open to hearing what the police have to say, and that Black people can't be quick to say defund the police, but to actually kind of guide them and aid them with learning how to interact with Black people. So the character analysis, there's Medea, and you probably seen and heard of Medea many a times. Most of the time you see Medea, she has a gun in her hand. As you see this picture, she also has a gun in her hand. In this movie, someone actually said hello to her, and then she pulls out the gun. And she's very much violent, and she usually is speaking about how she just got out of jail, or she had some trouble in the courts or something like that. And this to me is similar to what a brute would be, but kind of like the female version. Also, like, she is similar to a sapphire, but the only thing is she's not content with the system. And that's why I say she's kind of more of a brute, because she's on her own and she's kind of like, don't mess with me. She's like a force to be reckoned with. And she's like, she gets in trouble with the law a lot. And then we have Joe. Joe is pretty ignorant. Every time he talks about an issue, he always says the wrong thing. It's a very general issue that most people know about, and he usually says something wrong, and people are consistently correcting him, and he doesn't want to learn. He's not trying to learn anything better. He just is very satisfied with being ignorant. He's also very lazy. He doesn't like to do anything. So he resembles a lot of what a coon would be during that specific time. There's also Mr. Brown, who is also pretty ignorant. He adds a lot of ers and curs onto the ends of his words, and he has just a difficult time speaking. He also wears a lot of weird patterns and patch clothes, which during that time of blackface, they will wear a lot of patterns and patch clothes during that time as well. And it very much resembles what a coon would look like in that day and age. So this is a clip This is actually the opening scene of the movie, and it shows an interaction between Mr. Brown, Medea, and Joe. Okay, I think that clip will suffice. But basically, it just shows the interaction between Mr. Brown and Medea and Joe. I don't know if you paid attention to Mr. Brown's clothes, but he was wearing like 2 different patterns. It was kind of weird. And basically, how Joe and Medea, like they live together, but that's only because of money issues. It's not because they actually want to help each other and they actually are trying to build a community. It's solely because they can't afford to live by themselves. There was also references with, you know, Joe that suggests that he would have intercourse with his nieces and things like that. So it was a lot of weird things going on. It wasn't very African orientated. It's definitely not something that I feel represents me. And I don't think that it represents African Americans in general. It's something that's supposed to make people laugh, but they're laughing at us, not with us. So sorry about that. So the next slide is our action plan. So as Black viewers and creators, we need to change the market of what's acceptable for Black images. We have to hold out on our Black dollars. These are our dollars, and we have boycotted before, and the impact of our boycotts have been significant. I mean, it's changed. The Montgomery boycott changed a lot. So we can change by holding out our dollars and not supporting anything that represents or even slightly hints of minstrel shows, because another important thing is that minstrel shows came out before motion pictures came out. And when motion pictures actually came out, that's when they started building the foundation of motion pictures on minstrel shows. So a lot of the foundations of the way they write characters are based on the foundation from the same caricatures back in the day. So what we need to do is completely abolish any and every image that we've created about Black characters and really enhance the versatility of Black characters, because there's only so many Black characters that we see. So we need to make sure that we're representing each and every Black individual and not just the characters that were created in the 1800s. And that is the end of my presentation. Please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you, Alicia. I always wonder how they still get actors to play those roles in 2022. Our next presenter is Rebecca Silver. She's presenting representations of Black women in technology.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Silver. I am a senior Africana Studies major. I will share my screen. So my project is called Representations of Black Women in Technology. It is a screenplay proposal. I chose to do a creative scholarship. The reason why I focused on technology is because I wanted like the intersection of Black women and technology and media all being white dominated spaces. Hollywood is a white dominated space whenever we're making projects. And so it's really important to have Black writers and Black filmmakers that are making projects about Black people through a Black lens so that we can see projects that aren't tropes or stereotypes and that fully explore the diaspora of Black people. So my project is a half-hour comedy. It is called Love Code. It's a TV comedy about Riley Pope, a Black female coder who leaves her white male-dominated tech job to start the first Black female-founded dating app with her 3 closest friends. When I was researching about this, it is fiction, but it is founded in some research that I found, some being HBCUs. I read a dissertation about 30 different Black women who are in the tech field and trying to pursue that at an HBCU. And it's very limited, the amount of access that these women have, especially once they get into the professional realm of tech. Right now in America, only 3% of Black women work in tech fields. So I thought that being able to explore this within this medium would be a really fun way to show this in a way that's fun. I think a lot of time when we look at Black media, a lot of the content that we see is kind of glorifying trauma. And so one of my passions is comedy and being able to show the other parts of Black life. And these are our main 4 leads, which again, I wanted to make sure that they were smart and full people and not a trope. So one of the main people that is inspired by the main character is Arlene Gwendolyn Lee. She was the first Black female coder. A lot of people don't know that coding actually was a female dominated field up until about the 1970s, but it was all white. Arlene was really the first Black woman who was able to break into the field, and she had a really hard time. She had to take this test several times and she scored in the 99th percentile, and they thought it was impossible that a Black woman could do that. This is her quote: "The computer didn't care that I was a woman or that I was Black." And I have her kind of referenced throughout the show because a lot of people didn't know who she was when I would mention it. And so I thought this is such a fun way to educate people on the history of Black women in tech with also entertainment. So this last slide is a survey from the Writers Guild of America, which is the union for writers in Hollywood and the world. And in 2021, the number of Black women or women of color in the WGA was only 10%. So if it's only 10% out of thousands, then the types of projects that are getting made aren't going to be from our point of view. So that's why this is so important, that we give more opportunity to Black women who want to be writers, that we encourage them, that we are able to tell stories that matter to us, and that aren't further pushing the stereotypes that we see in some of the other even presentations that we saw today, with like Medea and things like that. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Amazing presentation. Our next presenter is going to be Keon Lynch, the Tier Jordan 4, a creative expression of African Americans' cultural experiences.
Hello, everyone. My name is Keon Lynch. Before I put my video on, I just want to let everyone know that my second draft of the art piece that I'm showing will be in the background of me. So throughout, I'll take the camera off so you guys can just see the picture. But here it is. Using an Afrocentric methodology, this project will enhance the artistic and keen eye for fashion around the African American community to help establish a more communal family feel from an Afro-cultural perspective. The mark of African American community is present in every aspect of popular culture that we see today. Despite the decades of contributions of decorated figureheads in this community to influence the postmodern society, the Black community often does not get the accolades it deserves. I believe shoes can be deconstructed and reconstructed to live on forever, to become a piece of art specifically from the Black community, from a Black creator. Though through ideas in the shoe industry, creating a story will resonate with the community, can send a powerful message and inspire many in the process. The purpose of this creative scholarship is to increase awareness of the African American communities through fashion, and more specifically, shoe coloration and design. Within a lot of the African communities we see today, we come across, we are filled with so many ideas, so many strategies, so many methods, and cultural shifting initiatives. We are told to suppress a lot of our emotions a lot of the time, and emotion can be used as a sense of expression, and a lot of people forget that. And that is not how you create a change or a purpose. You should express yourself. So I decided, thank you to Dr. Damage for inspiring me to show my sense of expression as to how this shoe design came to be. So I'm gonna take myself off the camera so you guys can kind of get a nice image of the shoe. To start, I want to explain the design and how it came to be for everything. I used the inspiration by the culture of the African culture. So the makeup of the shoe, the material is made from like kind of savanna grass, brushed suede. So it has multiple colors inside of the shoe, and the colors represent the African art, the many rivers in Africa, historical references, heavy representation of that community. And I didn't put it on the shoe yet, but there's African fractals that will be engraved inside of each shoe as a sense of feeling of empowerment. And another inspiration for this, for me, was the Boys and Girls Club. Just being able to inspire someone, a Black child like myself, to show me that I have purpose, to show me that I have a community behind me. And that's really important because a lot of the time we are not given that opportunity to be shown that. So I thank them very much. And I feel like with my shoe and my image, I can help not only that community, but the Black community in showing that we can represent ourselves through sense of expression. My sense of expression is through this art piece of my shoe. There's a lot of creators that have allowed me to show my sense of expression, such as Kanye West, as many people may know. There's an artist named Jerry Lorenzo. There are artists such as Michael Jackson. There are artists such as, it can go on. There are many authors as well, and that helps with sense of expression as well. This also goes by the transformation of self, myself as a person. I grew up very fast in a very sped up community, and I had to be an adult at a young age. And I feel like with the second part of the shoe, the material is able to be brushed away, and it's going to be an all brown shoe representing the African skin color. Chocolate, we all like chocolate, and it will be a chocolate shoe filled with sail colored laces, Black colored laces, and a couple of other colors I'm going to surprise everybody with in each box that I plan to manufacture at some point, to show that you can be different and it doesn't matter who you are. You can wear it however you want to. And I wanted it to be out of the norm. I feel like that's a great representation of how to do that. These will be made up with premium materials, so it's not going to be just generic. I want to make the inside of the shoe crushed velvet for a sense of royalty. As African people, we are royalty. We were kings and queens before, and I'm gonna still feel that way until I get into my tomb. And I feel like everyone else should. So I'm gonna continue to give that to all of the pieces of artwork that I plan to promote out in the future. And yeah, I want to be an inspiration to people who need a beacon of light, who need a sense of belief, a sense of getting out of whatever situation they're in. And I feel like with this shoe, I'll be able to show that I really can come from so low and be seen so high with all my goals. So.
A really cool design. Thank you, Keon. So next up, we have a Q&A opportunity for the panelists in the third section. What were your guys' inspirations? What drew you to your topics or your research studies? Let me check in the chat and see if there's any right now. And feel free to answer. Yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, I did not expect myself ever to be an artistic person. And it was really hard for me to be able to express myself emotionally because I'm very reserved. As much as I may be outgoing, I'm very reserved when it comes to my emotions because being vulnerable is scary. It's really scary to be vulnerable in any society, in any place. So for me to express my vulnerability as my artwork and how I see my passion, it was hard for me to just, compile all my ideas into one. And through the weeks, through the months, I was able to come up with an idea to show that finally to someone other than myself, to know that my ideas are actually valued and they're worth something. I have a whole bunch of pictures and ideas and sketches and designs and sonnets and poems and everything just written, but I was just so scared to show it. And Dr. Gammers got me to break out that shell a little bit when I was going through something mentally, and it ended up being better than I thought and expected, and along with a whole bunch of other people in my class.
Amazing. I can relate to that too. I used to just write all the time. So today being able to present, what was not only in the research, but what was on my heart about technology and the impact of social media and stuff like that. It was an ability to step out of my comfort zone and to really to be vulnerable, because at this point in my life, I'm like, there's nothing to lose. It's just, your expression. Like nobody can express what you have inside of you. So just my suggestion to you is just keep practicing, keep doing that, keep demonstrating yourself. And that goes for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the chat too. I appreciate the love. Appreciate it.
I can go next.
Yeah.
Similar to Keon, Dr. Gamage really inspired me and pulled that potential out of me, because honestly, I was literally all over the place when I first started my research. I was like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. She was like, bro, like calm down, like pick something important that you really want to talk about. And she literally said to me, she's like, well, what do you like to do? Like, what's important to you? Like, she just broke it down piece by piece. And before you knew it, we had research questions, we had all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, I thought this. So basically, it was just a process where I had Dr. Gamage be able to sit down with me and actually talk about my interests and what I really cared about. And I realized that the way that Black people are portrayed, it makes me uncomfortable. And I don't like that there's a lack of versatility in our representation. And that was really important for me to discuss. And it had a lot to do with kind of like having that redirection from Dr. Gamage. So big thank you to Dr. Gamage.
Thank you, Dr. Gamage, for all of your guidance. It's been amazing. Any other questions or statements of inspiration? Or
I can add to the last question. I also met with Dr. Gamage, and she helped me come to a conclusion with what I wanted to do too. And basically, it was just interesting. Like, I know for me, myself, like my family's super spiritual. I knew the Black community is super spiritual or religious or whatever they identify as. I know we have that like fire and that energy and that spirit within us. And it's like, still, after everything we've been through, we still are like communal in that way. And it's just interesting to think about where could we be if we didn't go through that erasure of knowledge. And then it's like, where could we be if we started relearning those things and practicing like it in our own way? Yeah.
I was really inspired by it because I want to be a writer, and I've been taking all of these writing classes, and I'm always the only Black person in them. And I still have never had like a Black writing teacher, which seems to like, it's frustrating when you're trying to tell Black stories and they're giving you examples of how you can make it more Black, and it's like stereotypes and things that of the opposite of what I'm trying to do. And so Dr. Gamage really helped me in finding research to help lend to the type of script that I was trying to write. And it's been such an amazing like experience. So thank you very much, Dr. Gamage.
Thank you all again for panel 3 for your inspiring research and creative scholarship. You all are gonna make me cry. One of the things that we love to do in Africana Studies is pull out the richness, the beauty, the brilliance in all of you. And you all have done that. And so it makes my job incredibly easy to work with you all, because you have so much in you and so much creative energy and so much in terms of your intellectual power that you empower your instructors to be the better person to serve you all. So thank you for the opportunity to work with each of you. We are coming up on our final panel. Thank you all to our audience who've been able to hang in there with us, as well as to our panelists who've been here with us. We're gonna welcome our final group of panelists in here today. And so I'll welcome back Alicia Hodge, who will moderate session number 4.
Hey everybody. So yes, I'm Alicia Hodge, and I will be doing the last session on Black Body, Politics, Affirmation, and Identity. Our first speaker is Savannah Scott. The presentation is about Black women's body, image, and perception. So please help me welcome Savannah today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Savannah Scott. I'm an Africana Studies major, and my project is about Black women's body image and self-perceptions. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. So ultimately, this research will examine the impact societal stereotypes of the curvaceous Black woman has on African Americans, female self-concept, and body image. There has been increasing discourse in popular culture amongst Black women that describe a desire for the slim, thick body type. And I wanted to look at what the experience for Black women that do not meet this ideal is. So my research questions are, do societal norms around body image and body type impact Black women's self-perception and body image? How are slender Black women affected by the pressures from the Black community to be curvaceous? And to what extent have Black females augmented their bodies to fit within the curvaceous body type standard? And how has this impacted their health and wellness? So the literature review, Chitambo in 2013 assessed the buffering hypothesis. He studied 1,694 women through surveying to examine the relationship between race on weight perception, attractiveness, and the BMI. He found the buffering hypothesis was supported and perceived attraction is independent of weight for Black women. In 2020, Hughes researches body image anxieties among Black women and the mediators they employ, and how did the frameworks that Black women use to rationalize their own bodies weaken their body image dissatisfaction. And she conducted in-depth interviews with 31 Black women of varying body sizes. In Lowy 2021, the article serves as a summary of the literature over the past 2 decades on the discourse of body image and appearance ideals of cisgender Black women, and the author acknowledges the gaps in accessing women's body image and finds that culturally appropriate appearance ideals are more relevant to understanding Black women's body image standards. Wait 1 second. Okay, I think I missed the slide. Okay, so let's go back to the historical background. So the Black female body has been demonized and treated inhumanely dating back to enslavement. And this is Sarah Bartman on the right. And she was a young Cochin South African woman that was publicly and sexually exploited by Europeans simply for entertainment purposes. She faced sexual fetishization and exploitation. And as we know and have heard from other presentations today, Black women have faced surgical experimentation back during enslavement, which was when doctors were performing experimental obstetrical surgeries on Black women. And we have been taught that Black women or Black people are monolithic and that our bodies are built like this, but this is not true, and we've been stereotyped and demonized. So back to the literature review. Much of the literature stated that Black women are buffered from body image insecurities because of cultural differences in body standards. But I wanted to look at Black thin women, and Black thin women don't fit into white norms and standards of beauty. And when it comes to Black beauty and body standards, we often don't fit into those standards either, and those standards that have been deemed as the buffer to body insecurities. So the methodology. Through Africana womanism, this research will explore the impact societal stereotypes of the curvaceous Black woman has on African American females' concept and body image. Africana womanism was founded by Conora Hudson Weems and centers the African woman at the core of their struggles and experiences. Africana womanism centralizes self-definition, which is imperative when it comes to self-perception and defying cultural norms. So for my methods, I did a content analysis of the reality television show My Killer Body with K. Michelle, and I also looked at rap song lyrics that focused on or emphasized the thick or curvaceous body type. So in season 1, episode 1, titled Suffering in Silence, the participant was 42 years old, and she got buttocks injections at age 25 and 2 rounds in 2010. She was cheated on, and she felt this was because she was not pretty enough or because she did not have the body. She was not receiving the attention she wanted from her boyfriend. And she also noticed upon getting her buttocks injections that she was having immense leg cramping and itching. She also expressed regret and questioning of her decision and decreased social activity due to physical pain and personal shame. Season 1, episode 2, titled Fed Up, the participant was 32 years old and also got buttocks injections and a tummy tuck in 2011. Her decision came after wanting to look like her female colleagues in the adult entertainment industry. She had comparisons with her younger sister, who she said had a naturally curvy body type and Black curves. And she also faced stereotypical and negative comments from her family members. Like, for a Black girl, why don't you have a butt? And from the front, you look like you're Black, but when you turn around, you don't look Black. She had 6 years later, she had sharp pains in her body, colds, and constantly getting sick. She used to be a bubbly person and very social, but then after facing a lot of physical pain, she stopped stopped being so social. Her doctors also left her to heal on her own, and she stated in the episode that she started to join Facebook groups that were like, it was a community of women that were like helping each other learn how to heal from like botched surgeries. She also said in the episode, will I ever be able to look in the mirror and be able to say, you're beautiful, you don't need anything else? And society is going to tell you have to have a big butt, a small waist, big breast, and a small nose. So these are some of I chose New Body by Kanye West and Nicki Minaj. And here's some of the lyrics that I thought were important to pull out. So new ass, new tits, new bitch, who this? And then this song also kind of highlights that like, this person that they're singing about is getting plastic surgery because they're saying, can't wait to see your new body. And basically like on this new body that you have, it's an entirely new body and no one's ever seen it before. No one's ever been with this new body. And also like, I had to step back because you're too thick and you saved up to buy a new ass of your own. So it's just like highlighting plastic surgery and buying new body parts to look better, and buying a new body that makes you look thicker than you were before. And I also chose to do Expensive by Ty Dolla $ign in this song. It's not as bad as the first one, but he kind of just talks about a slim, thick waist and not focusing on your face, but your ass. So some common themes that I pulled out from the reality show is insecurity as the onset of plastic surgery, a loss of motivation and regret. And then from the songs, I noticed that the lyrics affirmed and encouraged the curvy body type, which created more insecurity in vulnerable listeners and may lead to increased body image anxieties and possibly body augmentation to achieve the curvy look. And so for some solutions, I think it's incredibly important that we educate and understand the dangers of surgery and the historical and cultural relevance of body image in the Black community. I think spirituality is also another solution. You know, in the African worldview, focusing on the internal and the external is something that is, you know, important in the African worldview, as opposed to the European worldview, where they only focus on the external and, you know, materialistic things and how you look on the outside. In the African worldview, the internal is important. So building up your spiritual connection with yourself and a higher power could also help you not to be so inclined to focus on how you look externally. I think decreasing social media consumption so that you're not taking in mixed messages about your outer appearance and what you think you should look like, whether that's a thin white woman or a curvy Black woman that's gotten surgery that you won't ever be able to look like. I also think therapy to establish, you know, a self-definition, going back to the Africana womanism theory. And then for conclusions, the reality show, My Killer Body with K. Michelle, showcases 3 common themes among Black women: insecurity and inadequacy, the loss of motivation and regret. And the findings show that Black women face pressure from within the Black community to adhere to culturally relevant standards of thickness. And when exploring rap and hip hop music, it was also clear that the lyrics perpetuate the body image cultural values, which affirm and encourage the curvy body type and also lead to body image anxieties. My research explores how Black women that do not meet the body standards that are prevalent in the Black community remedy their body image anxieties. Many are turning to plastic surgery, which proved to be life-threatening to the health of Black women. So that's my presentation, and thank you for listening.
All right, everybody, let's give a virtual round of applause to Savannah. Thank you for that presentation. It was wonderful, by the way. Our second speaker today is going to be Ms. Glenda Smith. Her presentation is, Does Mass Media Interpretation of Black Male Imagery Negatively Impact the Public's Opinion on African American Males in America? So everybody, let's welcome Ms. Glenda.
My name is Glenda. I'm graduating this month, and to go on to getting my master's in nonprofit nonprofit management. Okay. Does mass media interpretation of Black males negatively impact public opinion on African Americans in America? What is mass media? Mass media is any means of communication, for example, newspapers, books, films, television, and now social media that can reach and influence a large amount of people at the same time. This study examines how mass media have exploited and distorted the imagery of Black males in America since the 19th century, and why this misrepresentation of Black males by mass media conflicts with how Black men live their daily lives. My research will show how Black media regularly portray exaggerated images of Black males and place negative stereotypes on them in order to contain them and to keep them out of white space. By using the lens of Black existentialism, which describes a system of thought that deals with problems of existence that emerge from historical and contemporary lived reality of Black people, particularly in this study, Black males in America. It is also a subset to African philosophy in connection with the African diaspora. Scholars like James Baldwin, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Ralph Ellison wrote about the stereotype complications Black men experience in their attempt to survive in a hostile environment of racism as the other. According to these scholars, exaggerated male images have unjustly dehumanized the identity of Black males to be animals, criminals, sexual monsters, predators, and not human. My research will show how mass media falsely represent Black male before and after slavery as inhuman, thus creating negative stereotypes that became their identity. Since Black males arrived from Africa, Black males, young and old, were classified as shadow and savage, but not identified as humans. In fact, during slavery in America, enslaved African males were displayed in mass media as childlike lazy coon, low intelligence subhumans, emancipated Uncle Toms, and happy servants. Toward the end of slavery, mass media began promoting caricature images of Black males to further implode fear in white society. After slavery, mass media began to reconstruct Black male imagery in films and in literature as inhuman, for example, brutes, beasts, and fearless gorilla-like apes whose main goal is to sexually devour white women and terrorize white society. Scholar Gail Dine's research show the correlation between Black men being historically targeted through mass media as a further threat to civility of white society now that Black males were freed from slavery and the economic vulnerability felt by working class white men seeking financial stability. Mass media manipulation of Black male imagery is one of the many white cultural practices designed to keep Black males in control. The film Birth of a Nation was made to instigate the white man's fear. Dine suggests that the image of Black males shown as spoilers of white womanhood has been a staple of a media misinterpretation of African-American men and boys. She adds that the purpose was to define Black men outside the normal realm of masculinity by constructing them as the others. Special note, Birth of a Nation was the longest movie of its time, more than 3 hours, and its release in 1915 sparked riots throughout America. After the release of Birth of a Nation, more white terrorism violence against Black males began to occur between 1916 and 1923. Jesse Williams was lynched in 1960. Willie Brown was lynched in 1990. Jesse Washington, who was lived in Waco, Texas, and a photo of him was turned into a postcard that read, "This is the barbecue we had last night." The movie King Kong is another manipulated imagery designed to fuel the public belief of Black males having violent behaviors and Black males' failure to achieve economic success in America. This film further promoted the stereotype of Black males as gorillas and monkeys during a time of high racial tension against African-American males during the time of World War I, the height of the Great Depression, and the surge of the European migration in America. These are the other caricatures of images that was given after Birth of a Nation. Here are historical facts of magazines like the Hustler magazines that show Black men as characters of sexual appetite every time they see a white female. They were also deemed as beasts or animals. And they're also shown in cartoons, comics, and literature as uncontrolled violent beasts chasing after white women. These are other examples of what mass media did to the image of Black males. In the 1970s, they turned them into super brutes, as you see, Sweet Sweetback, Superfly, Shaft, all were the super brutes of the 1970s. In the 1980s, mass media wanted to create an embraceable image for Black men. So they decided to get Walker, Texas Ranger Jimmy on the left to be this embraceable Black male for white culture. On the right, you see Chaka Zulu, who was a Zulu chief of South Africa, transferred into an embraceable fictive hero shown in a 1986 television series. However, his perceived inferior and primitive imagery through the lens of white culture remains. Therefore, mass media attempt to change Black males' imagery from dangerous to embraceable failed. In 2022, at the Oscars, Will Smith's slapping of Chris Rock, and to many people, dismantled the positive imagery of Black males and confirmed the original perception of Black males that they are violent, dangerous, and out of control. My literary reviews of scholar Tommy Curry reports that academic theorists were concerned that the Black male perception in society expressed in literature, films, and mass media intentionally framed Black males as dangerous and unembraceable. He also states that fatalism and the colonial mischaracteristic of Black male imagery since slavery are the misnomers responsible for influencing the public sphere of the existence of African men in white space. I examined articles that discuss media materials advertisement, and television shows that show Black men have been statistically targeted and misrepresented in society. My research and evidence was gathered from CSUN's academic database. My findings are taken from the materials on pornography magazines like Hustler and the films Birth of a Nation and King Kong that commonly depicts Black males as beastly brutes with large body parts and small heads to signify a lack of intelligence with a tangible sexual appetite. Today's mass media, in partnership with high technology, have allowed audiences to misinterpret the human characteristics and social lifestyles of Black males. This data shows how American society continues to accept exaggerated stereotype images of Black males as truth, even though the information is wrong, socially inappropriate, and culturally damaging. Recommendations. As proven by this research, Black males have been misrepresented by mass media. Therefore, I challenge you all not to conform to society's false perception of Black males. When you see a Black man, try talking to him to change your view of him if it's negative. By changing your view, you will be able to change the views of others. Also, Black culture must use its voice and high technology to show more positive images of Black males in the public, on television, film, movies, and in mass media. In order to begin rectifying false images of Black males, Black culture in America must promote positive male imagery every day, and they also must encourage more Black positive images every day. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda, for that wonderful presentation. Join me in doing a virtual round of applause for Ms. Glenda. Our next speaker will be Brandon Jones, and his presentation today will be about African American hairstyles and American Eurocentric workplace. So let's welcome Brandon today.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Brandon Jones. My major is Africana Studies. My minor is communications. And my presentation today will be about natural Black hair bias in America's workplace. African Americans have dealt with hair discrimination in the workplace here in America for many years. For many Black people, women in particular, hair is a very sensitive subject, which is heightened when seeking a job in a Eurocentric workplace. Black women must conform to white beauty norms to get hired and become successful in America. The problem with this process of African Americans conforming their hair involves a chemical process to straighten kinky and curly hair that destroys the beautiful essence of the natural hair to appease the white workplace, along with the physical and emotional damage that creates sadness and rejection. What I mean by that is that Black people choose to put relaxers in their hair. They choose to put chemicals in their hair on their own merit. But in the workforce, it's different when one has to destroy their image in order to be successful. And that's where the sadness and rejection can come in, because you have to survive. And in this world, you may be conscious, you may be woke, you may be all about Black beauty, but in order to get a job in America, you have to conform to the Eurocentric way of beauty. Black women and men have been forced to change their cultural identity by conforming their hairstyles into white beauty norms. However, hair is a visual display of identity in today's time. Black women are standing up for themselves and embracing their natural essence without any regards to the consequences. By doing so, these stands have been met with discrimination and job loss. The purpose of this research is to understand the ideologies of Black Americans who face hair discrimination in this country and see what type of effects it has placed on them. Like, has it caused them to be weaker? Or has it caused them, to hate themselves? Or has it caused them to, take that energy, reverse it, and turn it into a talent or a strength, to like a barrier to overcome? Methodology. Using content analysis in media and work of African hairstyle, this research seeks to employ an Afrocentric methodology to examine how African Americans employ an affirmative cultural stand on their hairstyling techniques in the workplace, and investigate the American workforce discrimination against Black practices. This research also seeks to investigate the ideologies of Black people who might endure a mental strength or illness when it comes with dealing with hair discrimination in a professional setting. So historically, the historic background, I wanted to start off with the lack of representation of Black hair, perception, and indoctrination. Black hair was seen as a symbol of a person's identity back in the day. And when the slave traders, when we were enslaved and we came over here, the first thing that they did was shave the heads of all African people that they captured. So right off the rip, they're erasing our identification of who we are. In the 18th century, laws passed to force Black women to cover their hair in public. And then in the 1960s, the Afro became a symbol of self-empowerment and activism. But then we had COINTELPRO come in and eradicate all of our leaders. And once they eradicated all of our leaders, and they put drugs into our community, we didn't have any strong stance. And then that's when our children, I remember when I was a kid, my sisters used to have Barbie dolls. And when you play with the Barbie dolls, at that age, a young Black girl doesn't see her reflection. And even in the household with me, I had G.I. Joes, and I would have like G.I. Joes as my G.I. Joes, or my Ninja Turtles would have a girlfriend, and the girlfriend would represent a white Barbie with blue eyes and blonde hair. Also, not only with Barbies, if you were watching cartoons and you turn to channel, you would see a commercial, as you see on this picture here, and that's pretty much the Eurocentric beauty. So as a young Black girl or Black male, you're seeing what the beauty norm is, and we don't see that as African American people. We don't see that image in ourselves. The historical background, the lack of representation of Black hair, the perception of when you're on watching television. I actually, when I was younger, I asked myself one time, every time I turn to television, it's always a white person. It's really not too many of us on TV. So when the indoctrination from when you're a kid and you're playing with Barbie dolls as a African American woman, you're not seeing your reflection, and at the same time you're seeing what they view in this Eurocentric world as beauty, when a Black person looks nothing like that. So yeah, okay. So a part of my literature reviews, I had a couple of literature reviews. Two of my literature reviews, one of them was interviewing 22 Black women, and they were asked questions of why did they go natural, when and how did they realize hair matters. And another one of my literature reviews was based off of 274 comments posted to an online discussion. Some embraced natural hairstyles, but many felt pressured to conform to Eurocentric hairstyles and have experienced negative consequences stemming from natural hairstyles. The theme from majority of those literature reviews was that they felt that hair was a form of oppression against them. And the one I have here is in 2018, Opie investigated how men, the primary decision makers in the workplace, evaluates Black women's natural hair at work. Black women are typically at the bottom of the workplace hierarchy and experience both gender and racial inequalities. Using content analysis, research used 200 participants who had had an average of 35 years in the workforce, recruited through Amazon's Mechanical Turk, completed the studies. They were given headshots and questions to answer on the person's personality based on their faces. Results were a significant main effect as compared to employment candidates with Eurocentric hairstyles. Participants rated employment candidates with Afrocentric hairstyles as less professional and less attractive. And those in that same literature review, Black women with natural hair was less likely to receive a second interview than Black women who embraced Eurocentric hair. Before I go here, so that's the ideology of men in the workplace that are, these are men who have had 35 years of experience in the workforce. And they're saying that Black women who wear natural hair are less attractive and less professional. And these are the people that makes decisions when it comes to hiring and firing. So already we're seeing that, white men and even Black men at times are judging and attacking Black women wearing their natural hair. So next I'm going to show you a video of the Eurocentric mentality in America. Hold on. Oh, this one you need to hear this.
You'll soon see what that is.
Let's say. It sounds like a.
But they turned a blind eye to the destruction that he's about to cause this country. You're not nearly as patriotic as we are.
So what does that mean, Bill? We've been listening all morning. Now, I didn't hear a word she said. I was looking.
But this is Bill O'Reilly, literally on the news, and he attacked Maxine Waters for saying her hair, he couldn't even hear what she was saying because she has a wig on that looks just like James Brown. And it was like, it was shocking that he said that. And the news host that was there, they tried to move the conversation forward and try to defend him. And he kept going like, I just don't understand. And she was like, I think she's a beautiful woman. He was like, I didn't say anything about her being beautiful. I just don't understand why she's wearing that wig. I just couldn't check it. It's the same hair as James Brown. So like, he's literally comfortable enough on live television to just attack a Black woman on her hair. Here's another in contemporary times. Here goes another another situation where we all just witnessed Chris Rock, a Black man, at the Oscars on a major stage where he attacked Jada Pinkett Smith on her hair, regardless of what happened afterwards. And actually, because of that, now Will Smith is looking like a crazy, angry Black man. But at the same time, she's going through certain things with the disease that she's dealing with. And Chris Rock felt comfortable enough to attack a Black woman in front of a major event here in America where millions and millions of people are viewing in, and they were sitting in front row seat. And the movie that he referred to, that is an act. That character in that movie cut her hair off for a role. Her hair grows back. Jada Pinkett hair is like this for the rest of her life. And, you know, so just to attack a Black woman on national television was unacceptable. But that just shows you how, you know, here in America, they're comfortable enough to continue to just keep attacking and attacking. The methods, assessing social media representation of Black hair in the workplace. I will conduct a content analysis on social media hashtags and the importance of natural hair representation in our culture. I will also look into the Crown Act that was passed into law first by California in 2019, which is a law that prohibits race-based discrimination. Our population will be made up of social media platforms through Facebook, Instagram, hashtags, and Twitter. We will use Google and other phrases like unprofessional versus professional hair and examine the algorithm and what comes up. We will also analyze the representation of African Americans in the workforce from ages 18 to 65. And we would look at hashtags like Afro hair, hashtag Black hair, Black girl magic, etc. So in my findings, I use Google search engine. I use two of them as professional hair and unprofessional hair. This is what pops up when you type in professional hair. This is the same image that I was speaking in earlier when a young Black girl is playing with Barbie dolls when she's a kid. And this is the same image that I, as a kid, seen on television. And I also seen it when my sisters was playing with Barbie dolls. And also when you're playing with a Black Barbie doll, her hair it mimics a Caucasian's hair with the silky wavy hair. So again, the statistic that I showed you from the literature review, when you have men in the workforce that are looking at Black women from their natural hair, looking at their natural hair, they're saying, this is not the beauty norm. This is, your hair is not professional and it's not beautiful. So then when you type in unprofessional hair, here it goes. This is where my reflection and my sister's reflection is here, where you just type in unprofessional hair and it's Black women in their natural. And, you know, so this shows that it's been an attack on our identity here in America. So I looked up the hashtags, and one thing that I found about the hashtags is that this hashtag Black women at work, hashtag Black girl magic, this is a place where it's a safe place where it evokes empowerment, collectivism, and fight. And it's also a place to vent and seek racial and mental therapy. It's over 31 million people following these hashtags. So in the fight, as we see that there's an attack against Black people and their cultural identity, this is a place where, from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram, where we're using social media platforms for men and women to have a voice and to have a fight in this. Another one of my findings is the Crown Act, which in 2019 was the first state, California was the first state to pass into law the Crown Act, which is a law that prohibits race-based hair discrimination in workplace, school, and public places. Is creating a respectful and open world for national hair. This Crown Act legally acknowledges that Black people have been attacked just for their own identity. Here, we're in 2022, the law just passed in 2019. After that passed, 13 other states has also passed that law. And in 2021, the United States Army announced changes to grooming policies to allow for a broader range of hairstyles among Black people. So with the fight that when you go to those hashtags and you see that Black women and men are fighting, we now have legal support behind us to allow us to move forward in this world when we're dealing with these type of discriminations. My recommendation is to incorporate more studies on Black men and Black hair discrimination, to focus more on the emotional effect of hair discrimination. What I mean by that is to dive deeper into the psyche of what a Black man or a Black woman experiences when they're going through this. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine earlier this morning before I came here, and I told him I had to do this presentation, and he was like, "What is it about?" And I told him, and he was like, "Is it only for women?" I said, "No, it's for men as well." He said when he was at a job when he was younger, he was working, and one of the guys asked him to cut his hair, and so he quit his job because they asked him to cut his hair, and also to explore young Black girls and boys on proper hair representation. I know now in 2022 we don't have the same Barbie dolls that was back in the day. They now have Barbie dolls that embrace the natural hair, and we can see our reflection on that. And also television, just monitoring what our children is watching and explain to them why you only see this representation on the television. In conclusion, my findings with my research with the literature review would go hand in hand with the Crown Act. It actually just solidifies everything that with each literature review, with each Black woman that talks about discrimination in the workplace is actually valid because they had to pass a law. It's legally, it's now illegal to discriminate against us for who we want to be. We now don't have to worry about no more policing our hair. We still would deal with microaggression, but at the same time, that is illegal. So now we have, with the hashtag, with the movement, with the safe space, we now have laws to support us moving forward into this world where we can, if one day you're feeling one way about your hair, you can go ahead and do that. I now have hair, and actually I was gonna take my hair out and pick my hair out, but I was running late, but by having hair, I realized like literally I need to redo my braids. And I realized, when at certain times I don't want to take my hair out because it'd be too big. And then it make, I guess I feel like it will make people feel uncomfortable. And I realized with this research that I could do whatever I want. I know I can, but legally, really it doesn't matter how you feel. So, I can, I wish I would have been able to have time to do it today. I'm going to leave you guys off with a quote. I was shy, but it came out in a big personality. My turning point was when I let my hair grow naturally, by Tracy Ross. And that's my presentation. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
All right, let's give a virtual round of applause to Brandon. That was a beautiful presentation. That was amazing. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to Ro. Go back to Ro on her presentation about demolishing the stereotypes of Black queer culture.
Oh, so hi, my name is Ro, and I will be presenting on the misrepresentation in Black queer culture and stuff. So there is some historical background on this topic. Well, we all know that queer, when you hear about Black queer culture, like, or Black gay culture, there's like tend to be like a certain like negative tone behind this topic, and this is due to the overall portrayal of like portrayal of gays being effeminate in the 1950s and 60s, and lesbian being butch. But over time, the 80s created the Black straight gays, where Black heterosexual people, they will look at anyone and just call them like the F word, just like homophobic slurs and stuff. Like they started being used a lot in the community, in music, in Spike Lee films, like just overall and stuff. So this type of stereotype, this type of portrayal over time have deemed like dangerous to the community. It causes violence towards the community as well, just overall detriment to the community. So my artwork, I did a trilogy of 3 different art pieces. And they have different meanings, and I call it the trilogy because yeah. This one is BQP as for Black Queer Power, and I chose this to draw the fist because like I know that that represents Black power, but also like in the queer community, like it's it's okay to have like to be effeminate. It's okay to have steez. It's okay to have style. It's okay to like, you know, like, so that's why I put the nails and stuff and like with the queer on the nails and stuff. And I chose the colors rainbow as well as like implementing like Black, the color brown to show Black, brown pride, Black LGBTQ pride. And yeah. This one is a Black queer agenda. So basically, this is to represent the community as a whole, where there are masculine, there are masculine and both feminine energies in the community. The overall stereotyping in the Afro community is far gone. We're at a time now where people are just them, not what the media has portrayed a million years ago. Like now, everyone is just them. And I just wanted to implement this, the do-rag, because I know do-rags, like, you know, it explains Black masculinity, but also like with the jewelry to add a touch of femininity. And that's what, you know, it's okay. Yeah. Okay, this is Drift of Culture. So basically, when I was doing this, to be honest with you, I was like, what can I do? And then I just started thinking about like different culture, like what our culture is, what Black culture is, but also what Black queer culture is. Black queer culture is style. Black queer culture is expression. Black queer culture is damn near drip. Like, you know, we have when you look at when you read designers, they tend to be queer individuals, Black queer individuals. Like our highs when it comes to like just fashion and just culture overall, like it's, you know, we play a role in these things, in a part in being a part of the culture. So I just wanted to like implement this, like, yeah. But that was it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ro, for that beautiful presentation.
This curvy women, like that's not me entirely. And so like we always hear like, okay, well, you're Black, you're supposed to have a butt, you're supposed to be thick, you're supposed to be curvaceous. But like, what if I'm not that way? Like, yes, I'm still Black, right? And I wanted to like see how Black women that feel like I do, like what do we do about that, and like what insecurities and what remedies do we employ to deal with those insecurities and those anxieties. So yeah, that's mostly where my inspiration came from. That came from myself, and yeah.
For me, it was different because my son was killed like 27 years ago, and he suffered with identity because he was dark skinned. And so I just wanted to do something. I want to do research about why was it that Black men were always targeted, and boys too, always targeted by the way that they looked. And so that was my inspiration to find out historically why this was the issue.
This concludes our session here. Pass it over back to Dr. Ganich.
Thank you all, and thank you to all of our panelists for their outstanding presentations. Thank you to our attendees who hung in there with us. We went a little over time, but we appreciate your commitment to learning and observing our students' research and creative scholarship. We do want to take the opportunity to invite you all to consider publishing your research in the Afrocentric Student Review. The call for papers is still open up until today. We may extend the deadline through the weekend for students who presented today, who want to publish their research. So thank you all again. We appreciate your time, energy, and effort. And we want to thank the AFRS 498 Pro Seminar course for convening the conference. You all have a great day and be well.